Rich people of Reddit who married someone significantly poorer. What surprised you about their previous way of life? Making financial decisions based around the 3-paycheck month. If you're paid every 2 weeks, most months you get 2 paychecks, and all of your monthly bills and budgeting is based on those 2 paychecks. But twice a year there are 3 pay days in a month, and that's when you can actually solve problems. That's when you can get the car registered, or fix the dryer, or get the cat spayed. The other 10 months you're doing maintenance and trying to cope. 3 paycheck months you can actually try to fix problems. I know this so well. Finally in a salaried position but on a tipped income, those 3 paycheck months were a serious lifesaver. More of a funny incident, but I was the poor one. My husband, at the time still boyfriend, took me out to a very nice restaurant. Waiter asked if I want pepper on my Caesar salad that was just made tableside. I said sure and he goes about it. Thing is, I didn't know you had to say stop. My husband slowly realizes this, but decides to see it play out. He did eventually say that I need to say stop. I just thought a Caesar was had this way as it was my first time even eating a salad that wasn't just iceberg and ranch dressing. It still tasted fine, just a little bit too much pepper, haha. I was adopted at age 7. I lived in extreme poverty and then all of a sudden I lived with a doctor who bought gifts for birthdays and Christmas. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could go to the store to get food. I just thought you went to the church and had to pray before they give you a bag of food. When the family had people over for dinner, if they ended the prayer before the meal with F.H.B. Amen, it was a signal to let the children know that they don't have enough food for everyone, so take smaller servings and let the guests get a regular serving. FHB equals family, hold back. They were always generous to their friends and didn't let their lack of funds embarrass themselves when doing so. I grew up poor too, but we never had any guests round for dinner. FHB, my heart. Honestly, food insecurity. When we were first married she would get visibly uneasy if the food in the house was running low. She never overate or anything, she was just always concerned about it. A lot of times when she was younger, she went hungry. On the humorous side though, she hates camping. Her answer is always the same. I camped because it was fun, she camped because they couldn't afford hotels. She and her mother lived with her grandfather to not be homeless because her grandfather owned a house. She was putting community college payments on her credit card and building debt with it. I paid off her credit cards when we were dating and she cried from me being so nice. It was only like $1,300. I bought a condo, then we got married, then we bought a house. I never really considered myself rich until I started dating her and learned that a trip to Wendy's was a treat. I grew up middle class, and we are currently middle class. Hell. My wife was born and raised in the Soviet Union. She still goes crazy for fresh fruit like it's the most extravagant luxury. The prevailing mindset in his community growing up that insurance was something only rich people had. Not health insurance, mind you. Well, not just health insurance, auto insurance. Going without it was a way of life for most everyone he knew. My so has to constantly remind me that I can go to the doctor whenever I need to instead of just hoping I don't die. I am on the other side as I married a girl from a rich family, although we both earn the same and I tend to worry about money savings future. Through the years I have realized that she worries less about it and still saves more and spends less than me. I feel like coming from a lower middle class family makes me think about saving more, but at the same time I spend money on things as I could not have them all before I got my own job. I am so like this. I think and plan and budget, but when my paycheck comes it is so hard to not spend it all on going out to eat or other frivolous things because I could never have those small luxuries before. Sandwiches. When I made him a sandwich I only put one thin slice of meat in it. He couldn't believe that was how I had sandwiches growing up. We weren't allowed to just eat deli slices. It had to go between 2 pieces of bread because that would fill you up faster and save on meat costs. I am not well off, but my stepfather is. I was raised by a single mom who spent money on everything and bills were always behind. She just couldn't manage her money at all. In her 50s she met and married a multi-millionaire. We are in middle America, so that goes further than maybe in a lot of areas. They have given themselves $10,000 a month budget to live on. living on interest, own their home. Anyway, once my mom met him and they got all her finance situated and paid off, she won't spend a penny. He spends like it is going out of style. He has actually begged me to take her shopping to get clothes and accessories. She won't do it. She spent more when she was a single mom with nothing. It makes no sense to me. At least buy a new outfit. She is heck bent to not use a penny of his money. They barely even have any groceries. If they have anything, it is because he buys it for them. She is a retired nurse that gets a retirement and SS, but she won't spend anything. She lives poorer now than any other time in her life. This sounds less like a financial issue and more like she's trying to preserve her pride. She knows that people will think she's a gold digger if she spends his money, so she's going to the opposite extreme and refusing to benefit from any of it. I didn't marry this woman, but when we started dating, she always wanted to chill at my place, never hers, which was fine. But she gained 35 pounds in just like a few months of dating. She was 100 pounds when we started dating. Not that it was a bad thing. 1. I am a chubby man, and 2. I was just glad she wasn't pregnant. Anyway, turns out her family couldn't afford dinner sometimes. So suddenly she had a place to eat every night and gorged herself. I know 2 siblings who were starved by their father for years until CPS took them away and placed them with their biological mother. From there, they gained at least 100 pounds respectively and will not stop gorging themselves on food. At first, I didn't understand, but now that I am older, I know. Food scarcity is traumatizing. I fell in love with my uni best friend who really didn't have any money. When I got a job, for my birthday, I decided to plan a holiday and offered to bring him along. It didn't even occur to me that this was his first ever holiday he'd ever taken. His family could never afford it growing up, and he'd never really thought to do it as an adult. My partner and I are both poor, but different kinds of poor. She's never been homeless or not had enough to eat, while I have. She's extremely frugal and hates buying anything we don't need. I feel a desperate need to stock up if we have any extra money, and it's a fight for me not to fill our house with canned and dry goods in case we don't have enough money to buy food next month for some reason. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there just was never enough of it around growing up. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there just was never enough of it around growing up. That makes perfect sense. I'm from an upper middle class American family and my husband is from a poor SC Asian family. It is hard for me to wrap my head around how poor they really were when he was growing up. He told me about eating only rice with sugar for meals because they couldn't afford meat. They were probably living off less than $0.50 a day for a family of 5 at times. I'm Southeast Asian as well. Rice, soy sauce, eggs and a little vegetables go a long way. I'm not rich at all, but my husband came from a very poor Mexican village. He told me he used to shower outside because there was no in-house plumbing and use leaves as toilet paper. I mean, there's poor, and there's my husband's previous life poor. He's been living in the US for 12 years now, but when we first met it was so interesting seeing life through his childlike eyes. Going to the cinema was a huge event for him. Heating food up in a microwave was a totally foreign concept. And staying at fancy hotels when we went on vacation was like whoa. I still see him surprised by things now and then, and it just reminds me how much I take my middle status class for granted. Hamburger helper. She hates it because it would be her meal 5x a week growing up. I had never even seen HH before I went to college and love that stuff. 10 for $10 deals are awesome. My so said today I made rent, meaning today I've earned enough, accumulated enough to pay the rent, and I realize that this is a monthly accomplishment to someone with no fixed income salary. Making rent is a huge relief. The other horrible part of having unpredictable income is that when you try to get your financial crap together, all the budgeting advice assumes that you get the same amount each week, or at least close enough to work off an average. It made me feel really hopeless when I was there. One of my exes could pull in a lot of money, easily twice or thrice what I could. He was so incredibly bad at saving this money, down to, say, setting himself up as a company to avoid paying higher rate of tax. but then paying a large amount each month to an accounting company to handle his taxes, which he'd do himself anyway because he didn't trust them to get it right. He'd pay for taxes from one end of the city to another or hire cars rather than use public transport. Flights cancelled, book new ones, never bother to claim back on insurance, buy a sports car, wreck it, sell it for scrap. He'd work contracts and then take time off to work on his own startup, but spend every weekend just going out and buying drugs and booze. I thought it was really fun and wild at first. Haha, money really means nothing to you. But when we became a long-term couple I started feeling like his mother. Man, will you not just fill out the insurance paperwork? Not rich but with a partner who was raised by a teen mom and grew up poor. Sometimes I just want rice and vegetables for dinner. That's a no from her. She won't go back. I was with a girl for a while who grew up in a pretty broken home. Still surprises me just how bad her spending habits are. She racks up credit card debt like it's nothing. She lived in the desert without air conditioning. Damn, that reminds me when we were kids, my dad got an AC for free from one of his jobs but we were almost never allowed to use it because of the electric bill. Probably only got to use it if it was like 100 degrees out. Long-term dating. Pets. I was always surprised by the number of pets she and her family had living in the trailer and how much of a share of their income they spent on them. Credit cards were avoided. For me growing up, we were encouraged to get a credit card in our name and use it as much as possible in order to build credit. There was always money to pay it off each month, so it made sense to 1. Build credit and 2. Collect airline miles or whatever the reward was back in the day. When we got together, she always used cash or a debit card. She had a credit card for emergencies and avoided using it otherwise. It took a long time to get her over her aversion skepticism. We were fortunate to have 2 good paying jobs, though it also taught me a healthy appreciation for what it means to have a financial cushion. The logic of buying things on credit that you could buy with cash in order to build a credit score is pretty weird when you think about it. You're basically taking out a loan that you don't need to show you're responsible with money. I dated a 1%er briefly. She was surprised I willingly went inside fast food restaurants. I can answer this one. I did not grow up rich by any means, but I would say my family was upper middle class. My husband was born in Nicaragua and eventually moved to Texas where his mother barely coped, supporting him and his brother. Some of the things that surprised me. 1. He never eats snacks. Ever. They didn't have food in their kitchen and he would go hungry sometimes. He said once they had an egg in the kitchen and he scrambled it and split it with his brother while his mom hungrily looked on. Now as an adult he doesn't understand snacking. If we eat a banana he thinks that is our next meal. 2. He is very impressed with smaller things in life. He had one toy as a kid, truck, and now, anything I get him he thinks is the most amazing thing in the world. He saves everything. 3. He is the hardest worker I know. He never wants to be where he was. 4. He is the most grateful, optimistic person I know. We've been having some problems. Family drama, trying to sell our house, work stuff, etc. He is not afflicted by any of it. He is cool as a cucumber. He always says, "Did you eat today? Do you have a place to sleep? Does someone love you? Then you are better than most people." I really love him. He makes me see the world in a different, better way. Not super rich by any means, but my husband said he'll always be surprised about the following. How I lived off of 13k in 2011. Resiliency to survive financially and pursue my dreams of being the first college graduate. How I didn't know what spinach was or tasted like until our first few dates, in addition to hella other leafy greens. First real date in my 20s. We went to a steakhouse. When the waiter asked me how I wanted my steak, I said cooked. Lol, yikes. Didn't know there was any other way than how my dad cooked steaks. Cheap flat steaks topped with ketchup ranch dressing. My experience is from the opposite perspective. I was the poor one. It absolutely floored me how my wife acts when something broke, like a car, appliances, clothes, etc. As a child living below the poverty line, replacing a tire or other necessities was a disaster, requiring tricky trade-offs in the budget or just plain acceptance of just how boned you were. When my wife's phone broke, I went into full panic mode while she shrugged and said, "We can just a new one this afternoon." And then we did. He was making good money but came from a poor family. One thing that surprised me was the lack of budgeting. No knowledge of a 401k Roth IRA. Retirement seemed like something that he'd never get to do. So even though he made good money, he was starting to rack up credit card debt. Now he's much better at it than I am. He adores budgeting and looks forward to FIRE. I'm from the poorer family, not super poor, but my in-laws have a stupid amount of money, so by comparison I'm very poor. But I think I can answer for her. We have 2 young kids, and my wife was shocked when I said we should look for clothes and toys for them at local flea markets and garage sales. The idea never occurred to her that we could save money by getting some gently used items. She had never even been to a garage sale in her life. She has grown to love them and now questions whether it is worth it to buy any item new or not before running to Amazon or a store. Her parents think it's disgusting we make our kids wear clothes that another child had before, but they don't pay my bills. Kids outgrow clothes so fast, most of those used clothes are basically new. Wife and I are not poor, not rich by any means either. We definitely hit up the local mom co-ops where moms sell their used baby kids stuff. Find a bunch of good stuff in there, to the point where we feel stupid for buying new because it's so much more expensive. Anyways, it's not even close to being disgusting. I came from a relatively wealthy family, new money. My dad started his own business and grew up poor, and my wife came from a lower income blue collar family. We got married out of college and neither made much money in the beginning. My biggest surprise was how she wanted to spend money. She was shocked when my mom bought her $100 plus pair of jeans for a birthday. She couldn't wrap her mind around spending that much on jeans. But she wanted a motorcycle, for me, which I don't ride in the first place, and then a new furniture set, and then a new bed, and then a new car. She wasn't concerned about savings or retirement, and she never wanted my parents' money for any of it. We are both way too proud of that. It took a long time for her to come around to having an emergency savings account, focusing on debt and not needing the other crap. She eventually realized that her parents wouldn't be in such a terrible situation because their spending habits are horrible. She still has it come out sometimes though. We recently paid off my car and she immediately thought I should get a new car. I grew up with a poor family. I was told credit cards were evil and to never get one by my parents. They had this outlook because they were never taught how to properly use them either. When I finally did have to establish credit and got my first one, I didn't overthink it and just followed the rules and paid it off every month. Then they allowed me more and more credit, more and more cards. An emotionally abusive ex would use my cards for everyday living, promising to pay them off with me. Soon the interest started to snowball and before I knew it I couldn't get out from under it. He ghosted me after 4 years of living together. I was on my own. For about a year I'd get home from work every day and just sob. I was depressed as heck. I met my boyfriend in the midst of all of this. I noticed him always using credit cards and talking about perks and points. He seemed so responsible in the way he used them. It took me a bit to open up to him about my debt, because I was so embarrassed, and it got to the point I felt like there was a weight on my chest 24/7. The late calls, only paying the minimum on each card every month, barely touching the interest. When I finally opened up to him, he sat down with me and said, "We are a team, we'll figure this out together." He helped me go over all of my interest and cards and see what the best option for me was. He offered to pay it all off with his work bonus that year and I pay him back. But we hadn't been together long, and I didn't love him for his money. I didn't even feel comfortable with him paying for dinner often. I knew I had to get out of this myself. One day when I saw him, he gave me an envelope and told me not to open it till I got home. He gifted me $1,000. I did not want to accept it and felt horrible doing so. He told me he hoped it'd help the burden and do with it whatever I wanted, or even something to treat myself since I couldn't do that for so long. I asked him if he minded if I used it to pay for a lawyer to file bankruptcy. He said he'd support me in doing so. I did end up filing. It was scary, but I've never made a better decision in my life. Felt like £1,000 were lifted off my chest. It doesn't directly relate to the amount of money they had, I don't think, but their place was always filthy. I mean, dog crap everywhere, So lived with his mom sometimes, but would rotate between her and his father, and both places were this way. Dishes piled up, floors were grimy, the place stunk of dog pee and cigarette smoke. One time, I used the bathroom at one of his parents' places and had to spread my feet while sitting on the toilets to avoid stepping in period blood. I mean, it was so disgusting. My sir was baffled when, after we first got married and moved in with each other, every day he would come home to a, generally, I'm not perfect, spotless home. Now, on the flip side, I once dated a guy whose stepfather was a lawyer, so they lived a lavish lifestyle. The only thing that he was surprised about when it came to my lifestyle was that I did not eat pizza with knife, fork, and a glass of wine. Lol. Common now. On the flip side, I once dated a guy whose stepfather was a lawyer, so they lived a lavish lifestyle. The only thing that he was surprised about when it came to my lifestyle was that I did not eat pizza with knife, fork, and a glass of wine. Lol. This sounds like a poor person's simulation of a fancy night out. Lol. What do insanely poor people buy that ordinary people know nothing about? When I was child, Burger King ran a special kids meal where it was too many burgers that were attached to each other like a weird conjoined burger experiment. Sometimes we would go. My dinner was 1.5 of the mini burgers. My mom's dinner was the half I didn't eat, and she would fill up on the free refills of soda. I had a really odd childhood. Until age 9 my family would have been classed as upper middle class. Then my father left and my mum went bat crap crazy. From 9 to 18 we were dirt poor. I remember being 10 years old and our weekly treat was to go to the Littlewoods Cafe. I think they went bust, and they did a 99-page 5-piece breakfast. We shared that among my mum, brother, sister, and me. One of us got the extra item. We'd take turns. As an adult I have made sure my children will never know poverty because of excellent memories like that. Nothing motivates you more than memories of fighting over a solitary sausage. I had to move out on my own when I was 17. I had no money at all and drove an old clunker Camry. I got a flat tire to match the flat spare in the trunk. I went to the discount tire on the east side of Indianapolis, where I was living, to see if they could patch it. When they got it on the rack, they said that belts were showing around the tire. In fact, all of the tires, and I would have to replace all 4 tires. I thanked them, went outside, sat in my car and started crying. The manager came out and knocked on the window. He said that he had a set of tires that would fit my wheels that someone left when they got new tires. I told him thanks, but didn't have any money. He told me not to worry about it and when I graduate, to come back and buy my tires from them. Growing up my family had its moments of struggle. Our public transport system at the time had tickets which were simply hole punched with the date and month, not the year. So we'd save them and store them neatly in envelopes marked by month and concession or full fare. After a few years of saving tickets we pretty much had free train and bus travel for the next 10 years. Until they changed the ticketing system to electronically stamped tickets with barcodes. Mine were done by color and letter. I would see people with plastic baggies full of bus tickets, trying to find one that matched the current day's color and letter. My office only has a unisex bathroom, so it has the facilities for men and women. Naturally there's a tampon machine, and tampons are only 5 cents. Once a month I'll work late, get a roll of nickels and fill up a grocery sack with tampons for my wife. Good man. Extended stay housing or motels, hotels. When you can't qualify to get an apartment because you don't have proof of income, you end up wasting more money to stay for a week at extended day housing or a cheap motel. It sucks ass having no home being a transient. I promise myself never to be in the same situation again. I have had students who've lived in extended stays. Apparently common practice in some places is to stay long enough to establish tenant rights, then stop paying until they are formally evicted. After that, rinse and repeat. I was so poor once that I would go to Long John Silver's and order a water and crunchies, which used to be free, then sit there and watch the people that would dine in. It was amazing how little they ate, and then they would leave without dumping their tray off in the trash. Fries, hush puppies, chicken, fish, all untouched. No, I didn't eat a piece that was bitten off of. I once saw a woman order a 2-piece fish and more for her kid. that ate one hush puppy and a few fries, and then left the rest of it there. It was the best I had eaten in weeks. Glad that's behind me now. I'm surprised they let you stay without buying anything. Lots of school systems do free lunches for kids under 18 during the summer. When I was a kid, I remember my dad taking us to get lunch at the school, then go play disc golf, soccer, or do something else free and fun. It was a blast, and I had no clue it was because we were poor. Dollar theaters, and sometimes they have a free afternoon evening show for kids with the purchase of a parent ticket. Many movies were seen by the three of us for $4 with a shared popcorn and Coke. My dad was amazing at making us feel rich on basically nothing. Good on him. You really realize how much your parents do for you once you get older and look back. Hope you're better off now, bud. The generic version of spam is called treat. You learned that sort of thing as a kid. I have been both very poor and very comfortable. A lot of very true statements already posted here, but here's what I have noticed. When you are broke, you can't plan ahead or shop sales or buy in bulk. Poor people wait to buy something until they absolutely need it, so they have to pay whatever the going price is at that moment. If 10 packs of paper towels are on sale for half price, that's great, but you can only afford one roll anyway. In this way, poor people actually pay more than others for common staple goods. This is true. It's expensive to be poor in the US. Stuff on layaway. My mom would always go to this store that sold heavily discounted irregulars and put it on layaway for our new school clothes. After selling plasma, I would walk to Wendy's and eat the crackers and ketchup for dinner. Learning the times of the day when meat, bakery, fish, vegetable and miscellaneous items are reduced to 75% at the local supermarket. I've been learning for years, but it's a good day when you find 400 grams of fresh mince for 99p, and you have warm filling food that you used to take for granted when living with parents. One thing I've noticed about being poor is that you become almost vegetarian because meat just costs too dang much, frozen or fresh. Another thing would be buying the cheapest large container of yogurt and mixing in jam for fruity yogurt. But that's not about being poor, that's just a good idea. I make a good living and I do the yogurt thing. Still saves a ton, and I honestly like it better because I can make it less sweet than the pre-mixed stuff. Even still buying Fage yogurt, I save about $5 a week doing my yogurt that way. Doesn't seem like much, but that's over $250 a year, and every little thing helps when you have crushing student loan debt you're trying to murder. A buddy of mine went through a tough time a few years back, and I didn't know about it until he told me about a year ago. One thing that stuck with me was that he made just enough money to survive. By survive, he meant literally enough money to pay rent, utilities and the cheapest, worst food he could buy. He couldn't afford transportation, not even the bus. He told me about a span of a few months he went through where he literally only ate water, dry noodles and peanut butter for a few months. He worked at a restaurant and they cut his hours. He couldn't find other work. His first big reality check was that he had to sell his car to make rent 1 month. The next month he started selling other unnecessary items, like his old TV, some old appliances and his nicer clothes. He got to the point where he was doing his laundry with dish soap in his sink. He couldn't afford deodorant, razors or any of the things we take for granted, so he'd steal them from the grocery store. He didn't like to do it, but he had no choice. He never got caught. When he told me all of this, I was floored. I wish he would have told me when it was happening. I would have helped any way I could. At that time, I was by no means living a fancy lifestyle, but I could have thrown him a $20 spot here and there to help him put some groceries in the house or some TP in the bathroom. Frick, just thinking about it makes me ill. He's still poor today, but he works full time and is happy, at least from what I see. At-home surgery. Used a pair of needle nose pliers, a razor blade and some antiseptic superglue to remove a cyst on my forehead. The secret is to cut it in a cat's eye shape. Quickly push the skin back after you pull the cyst out. Don't let it pop, and get the glue on fast. Burn like 10B on a B-boat, but it bleeds a lot and you have to get it on quick to stop the bleeding. My dad pulled his own tooth once. Said it hurt less than the tooth itself. That was one poor mother. I wonder where he's at. The first 4 years of my life were spent in abject poverty. As a child, I would ask my mom if we could get a candy bar. She would explain to me, at age 3, that we could get the candy bar, but if we did, it meant we couldn't afford a 2 liter of Coca-Cola. She would phrase it like so: if you get the candy bar, it'll be gone in a few days, but if you get the Coca-Cola, we can have Coca-Cola for the whole week. Amazingly, I knew enough to understand that Coca-Cola for over a week was a better deal than 2 days of a candy bar. As a side effect, I was regularly told no when I asked for things I wanted, mostly Lego sets or He-Man toys. Around age 6, my father's stake in a mineral prospecting company finally paid off. Turns out he had been putting every dime he had into it since before I was born. We went from surviving on mayonnaise sandwiches to having 2015's equivalent of $10,300 per month in income. My little sister was around 2 or so at this time, and she was getting everything she wanted. For the first 6 years of my life, I had learned that asking for things I wanted would always end with a no, so I never asked for anything. My parents weren't able to put it together until my grandmother got very sick and came to live with us. The whole family was out shopping, and my grandmother knew I loved Legos, but I didn't ask for a set of them. Meanwhile, my little sister had a Barbie doll and a My Little Pony in each hand. She stopped and asked me, "Rathedin, you don't want a Lego set? Mommy and Daddy always tell me no, Grandma. We can't afford them." I have only a very vague memory of this, but before she died, my grandmother told me this story and said that my mom broke down in tears in the middle of the store, sobbing. My dad had a look of defeated failure on his face, according to her. Apparently, it simply never occurred to them the reason I never asked for anything was because I had always been told no. For Christmas, I got 3 Lego Technic sets. Powdered milk. I once worked in a call center and an old lady called almost in tears that cable went up by $1.50. Her line that she repeated more than once was that she couldn't afford fresh milk and had to buy powdered milk, unless it's due to a lack of refrigeration available or some sort of allergy. Only the very poor would buy powdered over fresh milk. We drank powdered milk growing up. It was terrible. Sometimes my mom would mix a bit of cream and to make it taste better. It didn't work. Ugh. Thanks for bringing up this painful memory. I knew a guy that would go to a livestock feed store and buy antibiotics and some other meds there that were meant for farm animals when he got sick. There was another med he'd get at pet stores too. He'd just cut the pills into smaller pieces to try to guess what the proper mg amount was. It's apparently crazy cheap for certain meds and doesn't require a prescription or govt oversight like it would at a normal pharmacy. My parents would just get cheap antibiotics over the border in Mexico. That and roach poison and some other stuff like that we probably don't carry in the US. For a good reason. Growing up was interesting regarding money. My mom was a hoarder and I lived in a house with trash including animal waste everywhere with no heat or running hot water. I used to take jugs of water and put them on my front porch to warm up enough to bath with. The house was failing apart and the tub was actually sinking into the ground so we wouldn't use it, so I made a hole in the corner of my basement floor so it would drain. The worst was winter. The water never got warm because of the cold and my hair would be frozen since there was no heat. It took me a long time to figure out this wasn't normal. What made everything worse was she was abusive and made us poor with her spending. She made about $1,000 a week or more and would give it to charity so others saw her in a positive light. They didn't know about the house. Once she even won the lottery and got $82,000 and gave it all away. All I asked was for a trailer so we had someplace to get warm or shower, but she saw nothing wrong with our life. There would also be days she gave our food money away and I wouldn't be able to eat if there was no school. My mother is a B and we have no contact anymore. On the awesome side, I have 4 kids and a 3-level house with 4 bathrooms. Guess who showers all the time with hot water now? About a year ago, I was addicted to alcohol. 4,000 kilometers from home. Dropped out of school and living in my 20-year-old car. I got so used to eating microwaved potatoes that I considered walking into a 7/11 and pocketing a handful of mayo packets while pretending to buy a hot dog, a special treat. I grew up distinctly middle class and generally did not want for much. My recent experience has really put into perspective the difficulties experienced by people who are or have been in similar situations to myself, but bear the burden of direct responsibility to kids and family. Things have gotten a lot better since I've accepted the help of other people. Seriously, even relatively tiny gestures of kindness will go a long way with someone who is literally struggling for survival. Never underestimate the impact you can have upon another person's life. I'd probably be dead by now if it weren't for the unconditional love and support of friends, family, and random strangers. Instead, I'm 25, relatively healthy again, and back in school trying to finish off my engineering degree. If you've taken the time to read this, then thank you. It means a lot. Rent to own furniture. $500 flat screen becomes $2,000 when you pay by the week. Oh god. Bags of frozen veggies and a couple packs of ramen can make a family meal. I used to buy these awful frozen chicken discs wrapped in bacon. They were terrible, filled with gristle and just nasty. Eating those with rice and frozen corn was a real treat. I ate Kraft dinner, mac and cheese, every day for about 2-3 years because that was all I could cook while my mom worked. I could have made SpaghettiOs, but I hated those. That for dinner, and one of those cheap 99-cent pack donuts from the grocery store for breakfast. Lunch was bologna sandwich and an apple. Finally, when I was about 10 or 11, I started teaching myself how to cook from my mom's old cookbooks, so my meals got a lot better. All carbs and cheap fats, scalloped potatoes, rice and cheap meats. My local bus service used to have paper transfers, so you'd pay your fare, get the paper transfer that was good for an hour, and then you'd use it for the next bus. But if you were only going to the station, you'd get a paper transfer anyway, then hang around the station for an extra 5 minutes to see if anyone needed it. Conversely, you'd wait around for people getting off the bus to see if you could score someone's transfer. This only worked if you weren't switching buses, but I got quite a few free rides this way, and gave many a transfer away. Going without meds, living in constant pain because you can't afford a prescription. I remember laying in my bed at night, and my mom would be sobbing in her bed from pain, because she couldn't afford the meds that would treat her rheumatoid arthritis or anything but generic Tylenol for her pain. I guess that's not really buying anything, but while we're down memory lane, saving your birthday money from your grandma and aunts and uncles so you can pay for a babysitting course that lets you babysit at 12. Getting a babysitting job at 12, and babysitting every day from 3 until 7 or 8. To earn some money, giving that money to your dad so he can pay his phone bill and put gas in his car. Getting a real job at 14, working at a fast food joint so you got to eat dirt cheap. Still giving your dad money, but this time knowing it is going to the casino with a bar, but still doing it anyway. Being poor was awful. 0/10 do not recommend. What odd or unusual preferences have you developed due to growing up poor? I still can't bring myself to write in Mad Lib books, or on things that could be reused. Growing up ultra poor, it was a rare treat to get something frivolous, but Mad Libs were also semi-educational, so every once in a while I would get a new Mad Lib book from my dad. But I felt a lot of anxiety about wasting them by writing directly in them. If I numbered the blanks and then wrote on a separate sheet of paper with the corresponding numbers, I could reuse the books over and over again. Being really poor made me live in this awful anxiety-driven state of don't use it up because you might not get any more anytime soon and you better use it all and not waste anything, which made me overthink and overanalyze my actions. I was confronted by this preference to not mess things up in my master's degree program, because the prof would expressly tell me it was okay to write on the handouts because she would share the digital copies with us so we would have a clean copy to use in our own classes later, and I still couldn't do it. Using plastic grocery bags as trash bags. Don't really see the point in using actual garbage bags. Garbage bags, leftovers from your grandma's bags, clothes bags, lunch bags, the all-around reusable bag. Anytime someone tries to buy me food or anything for me, I always try to go for the dollar menu or try to go for the lowest amount even if they say buy whatever. Not letting anyone in the house. Operating under a barter system with friends. Where I grew up there wasn't much money, so people often bartered goods, services, and often exchanged small handmade gifts as payment. Then I moved and discovered that wealthier people do not like this at all. Even though I don't have to as much, I still calculate how many hours I have to work in order to afford something to decide if it is a need or a want. Do I want to work 2.5 hours to fill my gas tank, or 2.5 hours to buy a single shirt? I want the shirt, but the shirt isn't going to get me to work. I really want a Switch and several new games. I'll have to work at least 9 days to afford the Switch and the 3 games I want. And after I've worked those 9 days, I can't justify spending the money on the Switch and the games. Yup, I do that too. When you start comparing purchases to hours of work, it starts getting hard to spend real fast. I legit cringe when I buy anything slightly expensive, and I find myself constantly buying the cheap ass store brand products instead of name brand crap. Dated a richer girl who told me she had never had Chef Boyardee or Spaghettius before but was disgusted by them. Apparently her parents had always told her growing up that canned food was for dogs. What the frick? Her saying that hit especially close to home because I eat Spaghettius with a grilled cheese at least 3 times a week. My dad grew up even poorer than me and he won't eat Chef Boyardee because it is so crappy. I like cheap wine. Even when my budget allows for a $75 bottle, I'll buy the $10 bottle. I still prefer thin, rough bath towels. Big fluffy towels are too fluffy. It feels weird when fluffy towels get wet. Yes, if the towel is too fluffy it feels like it isn't doing its job. Not sure if odd or unusual but my parents used to tell me eat all the food served since we were poor and sometimes they wouldn't eat so I could have a full serving of food. I'm no longer poor but I still eat the full plate no matter how full I am. This messed me up royally as a kid. Now I just go without and eat leftovers from the plates of the kids I watch for friends and family. They think it is funny that I'm only hungry when cooking and when everyone else is done. I hope they never figure out how poor I am. Toast with butter and cinnamon is my favorite go-to for breakfast. I will have to try that tomorrow morning. Sounds great to me. Eating fast. Had 4 siblings and only so much food was made for dinner. If you didn't eat fast, you didn't eat. Yep, I know the feeling. However, I learned to eat fast from prison. Haven't served time since '94 but I still wolf down my food to this day. It's a hard habit to break. I am, to this day, unable to manage my money. Going from not being able to spend anything to having at least $300 left for whatever I want made me spend recklessly. You'd think it would be the opposite growing up poor but spending feels so good : This is fairly common. Most people in your situation will buy things since experience has taught them they don't know when they will have money to spend on things again. So they end up spending it all, thus having no more money. I just buy 1 pair of trainers and wear them until they fall off my feet, then buy a new pair. I make good money as an adult but I still do this. I also don't buy branded clothes. I worked with a guy and we earned the same money yet he collected limited edition trainers and drove an expensive car. I just couldn't comprehend the waste in money. I cycle everywhere because it is good for health. I moved to Switzerland in a few weeks for a job that pays 2.5 times my current salary and I still intend to cycle everywhere. I love Little Caesars $5 pizza more than fancy brick oven pizza. BC spending that much gives me too much anxiety to enjoy the food. Not having a lot of clothes. I can't stand a cluttered closet and having more than like 3 pairs of shoes seems excessive to me. Ditto. I had 4 pairs of shoes once and I felt like I was suffocating but they were all necessary: 1 pair for work, slip resistant, 1 for church, 1 for just daily use and 1 pair of gym shoes. Not filling up the gas tank because you might really need the money later. $10 at a time. Save another $10. That's food for a week just in case. There were 5 of us growing up and so we always had our good clothes and our everyday clothes. We changed out of our good clothes as soon as we got home from school and I still have this habit to this day. I change out of my work clothes and into lounge around the house I don't care clothes as soon as I get home. Love me a can of beans. If I have no dinner, no problem, I got a can of beans. Beans are also super healthy and food for your digestive system. Off-brand foods, so much cheaper. I can't wrap my head around people who don't buy the store brand at least most of the time. At the store I shop at it's usually about half the price and I can't tell the difference, if there even is one. I can sleep anywhere. Slept on the floor for a good couple of years, and can handle heat pretty well cause we didn't have AC. It was 1 window unit, until senior year. Can literally watch anything and be entertained cause we only had one local channel 10 station. Saying all this sounds like I grew up in the dang 50s, but this was all in mid 2000s lol. I've gotten used to not having a bed frame and ended up using just the mattress and box spring and having old flat pillows instead of new fluffed up ones. I still buy used clothes. Me too. I try to say it's because I want to be environmentally conscious, but really I just can't bring myself to spend more than $6 on a top. I eat a lot of frozen chicken pot pies. The crust is amazing. Lots of people mix it all up. I eat the crust last, but hate crust on actual pie. I developed a dislike of wearing new shoes. I prefer old, worn out shoes. The new pairs feel too rigid. Keeping all my clothes even though I'll never wear them. I didn't have much growing up, so now I feel like I need to keep everything. A close friend grew up very poor and unsupported. Things were always a competition between him and his brothers, so he maintained that mentality into adulthood in many respects. Fast forward to us going to a Smash Bros tournament. He's egging me on while I'm playing other people, but I'm sincerely supportive of him when he goes up for his own match. As we leave the store he basically says, "Wow, I was in butthole to you while you were constantly cheering me on. I feel kinda bad now." He just prefers being competitive in nearly any aspect, though it's certainly gotten calmer lately. I get freaked out if my pantry isn't full. It doesn't even matter if it's with food I like. I just have this fear of not having food in the house. Same. I hoard non-perishables. Not turning on the heater no matter how cold it gets. Just layer up and lots of blankets. Mac and cheese with tuna. Cheap but so good. Saving every cent I can. I'm talking 80-cent versus 60-cent cans of beans. And never buying actual brand name anything. Pinching pennies never seems to leave you. I ignore the dates on a lot of food. The milk I smell before I use to make sure it's not sour. Constantly checking the bread for mold when I know it's past the date. Smelling the meat before I cook it to make sure it's okay. Unless something is like 6 or more months past the date, it's usually good. The expiration is just the warning that means you have to start checking it. This shouldn't be a poor thing. Food waste is so terrible, and most of those dates are either inaccurate, mean best before, which is about quality not edibility, and with some things you can pick cut off the mold like cheese, maybe a bad fruit in a bunch, cooking it more thoroughly or cooking it early to then eat a couple days later etc. Buying cheap things and making peace with the fact that they will eventually break. It may not taste good or it won't fit me, instead of investing in something long lasting. I can travel. I'd love to. I could probably afford to now, but dropping any amount of money on a trip seems insane to me. I grew up never really going anywhere outside of a 3-hour drive and only stayed in hotels maybe like 3 times while I was under 18. It also feels weird to be in debt, but managing it. I have medical bills that I am paying off and credit card stuff, but it's all pretty manageable. Growing up my mom constantly would get payday loans. We had bill collectors calling non-stop about medical debt, and my mom maxed out every credit card she owned. So I was taught that debt was horrible and you could never get out of it. Also, I really love microwave tortillas and cheese as a whole meal. That and lettuce, cheese, and ranch wrapped up in a tortilla. I think back on it, though, and I'm really not sure how my parents raised me with how much they made. I make double now what both of my parents' combined income was when I was in high school, and I really don't even make that much. I feel that debt thing. My parents somehow declared bankruptcy twice, which is strange because they never spent money on us, and I can't imagine what they did spend money on because of fake credit cards don't help with buying drugs. My husband and I have some manageable debt, but the panic passes through my mind once in a while. Plus-sized women. The only skinny chicks in the hood were Coke W. I'm plus-sized and losing weight quickly right now. I've come to believe being fat in the first place, for me, has a lot to do with never knowing if we would have enough food from week to week. Also, I grew up with the mentality that if it's free, take it and take as much as you can. Leftovers are my jam. I take home friends' leftovers. I have no shame. I can find a good way to reheat just about anything. Expiration dates are like yellow lights. The concept of selling a car is entirely foreign to me. We drive cars until they die so completely that even the junkyard doesn't want to pay for them. Keeping the lights off almost all the time, or biking everywhere. I like fake maple syrup better than the real stuff. Mrs. Butterworth for life. Only ever buying clothes if there's a really good sale. I never go out to buy new clothes. I love walking everywhere. If it's within a 60-minute walk, sometimes even longer, I am that person that will walk and wants everyone to join me for the exercise and adventure. When everyone else is begging me to take a 5-10 minute Lyft Uber, heck no. Why would I pay for something when I can get exercise and have a pleasant stroll for free? It's so nice to walk around and see your city. People my friends will pay a $5 Uber to not walk 5 minutes in the relatively okay part of downtown La. But I enjoy walking around and seeing the buildings, people, hot dog stands, random YouTubers, which I would have totally missed out on had I gotten an Uber and started scrolling IG. Little strolls make you appreciate the little things in life. Only buying clothes for back to school. In the working world, this turns into only buying clothes for a new job. I don't like giving or receiving opulent frivolous gifts. I always feel harshly like that money should be saved or spent on something practical. I like splurging when it's for something special for someone else. I hate buying something nice that I really want for myself, and worse, when someone else goes out of their way to give me something nice. I used to enjoy just eating a tube of saltines with butter. When people use 2-3 paper towels to dry their hands off when it can be done with just one sheet. What's something a poor kid would understand, but would utterly confuse a rich kid? Waiting around in a laundromat. Had to go to one a couple times before. Those suck. Watching the rest of the class go on class trips or vacations while you stay home and or work. Oh man, that one hurt to read. I always went on field trips and had amazing memories and moments. I can't imagine a kid having to stay behind due to cost. But at our school we had a subsidy program that even if parents couldn't pay for trips for their kids, the school would be able to help assist. I don't think this was ever abused either. Every time you get a little bit ahead, an extra $100 or so, and being able to relax and breathe a bit. Next day something goes catastrophically wrong with the car, or an appliance, or an unexpected late charge on something you forgot about. It never ends. One step forward, 2 steps back. It's expensive to be poor. Having sleep for dinner. If you pull your knees way up to your chest, it helps with the hunger pains. The guilt versus gratitude relationship fight you have when your friends share their food with you. Because on one hand you never have enough money to buy enough food to be fully sated, so that extra from your friends is awesome. But on the other hand you understand how awful it is not to have enough food at lunch, and you don't want to put your friends in that position. The other hand you understand how awful it is not to have enough food at lunch, and you don't want to put your friends in that position. Becoming wealthier as an adult now, nothing felt better than paying back a kid who used to give me PBJ sandwiches. Those were everything at the time and he didn't mind, but I was guilt-ridden. Going to the library to use the internet. New means different, not unused. When you're getting new clothes, they are used from family or a thrift store. Paying bills before the age of 18. My entire identity revolves around food. I use my spare fun money on food now. I give gifts of food, I take friends out to eat. I give people their fav snacks and candy bars as little surprises. We never had enough as a kid. We went hungry every dang day. And now, I express myself through food. I'll bring friends dinner. I'll bake people's favorites. I'll bring my coworkers entire casseroles. I'll take huge pots of soup to our neighbors. I'm getting emotional right now, just thinking about how important the availability of food is to me. I have an 18-year-old coworker that doesn't eat lunch during break for our 12-hour shift. So I started packing twice as much and I feed her the extra I bring. I just want all my friends and family to be full. To never have to feel hunger like my family did. Like I did. I don't want that for them. I wish I could give you multiple upvotes. Buying food, not for taste or preference, but for the price point and how filling it is. It's all about that rice. Sugar sandwiches for dinner. Butter, sugar and bread. We thought it was like dessert for dinner, but my mom told us recently it was because we didn't have any food. For us, we had butter and sugar toast for breakfast, since my dad needed the milk for coffee and we were out of peanut butter and jam. Brought it to school for lunch a couple times too, though normally the we're out of food lunch was jam or plastic cheese sandwiches. My parents always managed to find something for dinner, even if it was just a grilled cheese sandwich each. White bread toasted with butter and garlic powder equals poor man's garlic bread. My parents would splurge and buy hamburger buns for it. I remember when we would go shopping for school clothes, it was at Walmart or Kmart and it was always the sale items and one size up so we could grow into it. And shoes at least an inch too long. Being really young and getting excited about the power cut, lighting candles etc. when really it was because we couldn't afford electricity. Good on your parents for making it a fun event instead of burdening you with the sadness of it all. Milk was in the pantry. Carnation instant. You get to eat the leftovers which the guest didn't eat, as your parents make the best items for your guests. My Korean family was by no means poor, but man do I feel this one. No brand name snacks being shared. No brand name anything, really. I was always jealous of my friends who had fancy snacks like Dunkaroos or Gushers, since I only ever got the Kroger or Walmart brand snacks, and only if we had extra food stamps left over. Being able to buy the good snacks for my kids makes me feel like I have accomplished something in my life. Back in high school, I was getting flamed for having cheap shoes from Marshalls. Here's something along the lines of how it went. Kid, those shoes are ugly as frick. Me, I agree. I gotta wait for my next paycheck so I can grab some new ones. Kid, why don't you just ask your parents buy you shoes? Me, because they gotta put money in more important places right now. Kid, wait, so your parents don't buy you new shoes? Me, nah, I gotta save up. Kid, look of extreme confusion. The confusion of the kid when he realized that most parents don't buy their kids everything they want was something I won't forget. In typical high school fashion, he then proceeded to tease me for being broke, also explaining to others that the only time I left my home state was for family emergencies was something that they couldn't grasp either. I used to get clowned for my clothes and shoes. I can still see their laughing faces like 25 years later. Yes, I'm aware my shoe has a hole in it. No, my socks do not match, and yes, I do cut my own hair. Thanks for pointing that all out so loudly and in front of so many people. The large pillows full of cheap cereal at the grocery store. They always put them way up on the top shelf too so as not to offend the more expensive General Mills Kellogg's Post cereals. At my local grocery store, they are on the very bottom instead. Knowing how to sew as a necessity. I've fixed countless shirts and pants, even my couch. Everyone needs to learn this. Fried bologna, cause we eating fancy. Putting water in shampoo bottles to make it last longer. I don't know what level mix you are talking about, but there is no sense letting the coating inside the bottle go to waste. Add a little water, shake it up and let it settle to get at least 4 or so more washes out of it. I was a poor kid who was lucky enough to go to a good high school. The downside of that was growing up next to entitled brats. I've seen a girl throw her brand new gold iPhone across the room and not bat an eye because her parents would buy her a new one. Sure enough, the next time I saw her she had one. These are the same kids that crash the new cars they get for their birthdays, get manicures, facials, and eyelash every week despite never working a day in their lives. On the other side, I was scared when I ripped the strap off the backpack I had been using for 4 years. I sewed the dang thing up because I didn't want to stress my mom out with having to find a new one for me. I used it for 2 more years through college until it finally kicked the bucket and I was able to get a new one. Getting upset when clothes, shoes, or other basic items are ruined. If I had a hole in my shoe or a stain or tear on my clothes, I had to live with it, at least for a while. I knew kids in the middle and upper classes that would get chewed out for stuff like that, but their parents would usually buy them new stuff right away. That wasn't the case for a lot of kids like me because it just wasn't possible. Most of the clothes I owned were hand-me-downs to begin with. Some of it was found in the garbage. My friend borrowed my long sleeve Nike shirt, newly purchased from the Salvation Army, and immediately put thumb holes in it. She just laughed as I flipped my crap. Frick you, tenor. My mom whooped my ass over that. Parents borrowing birthday money to help with bills or buying food and toiletries. Love them to death. They've always worked hard for me and my sister. Oh, and not having health insurance. That cable and Wi-Fi are a luxury. That going to the nearest beach is a vacation. Santa Claus have a budget. Relaxing in an empty parking lot is your friend's car is a typical night out because nobody has anything at home and don't want to be there anyways because it's too stressful. You can't just live within your means. Guess he'll die then. Oh wait, funerals are expensive. The actual process of looking at something in a store and debating whether or not it's really something they need or is it something they want before trying to see if they can find a cheaper version. Back where I am from, we still have to heat up bath water on the stove in that neck of the woods. Every term our school would do a thing called Scholastic Books. It's like a catalog of books and other educational things that parents can go through, put what they think their child will like and order them. The school gets a percentage of the sales and the kids get an education-filled Christmas unboxing every term. Almost every kid in my class would get at least one thing. Expect me. So, just sitting in the back of class watching other kids showing off their new stuff to each other. One year a kid left before the order came in and the teacher gave his book to me. Rich kids will never know the feeling of being poor, having it noticed and not being shamed for it. It was the only time I ever got a book from Scholastic and I still have it. Side note, I'm all grown up and am not super poor. Every term my mum and I pick a class at the local primary school and buy books for every student that doesn't have a book order in that classroom. It's a mixed school, half rich people and half poor people living in a trailer park struggling to get by. Doing without. Most rich kids have never had to contemplate what it is like being without food or living in a cockroach infested and safe heck hole before. No one should. Coming to school stinking because your parents couldn't pay utilities that month as if you chose to be gross. I'm feeling this one. I grew up on an acreage that we rented, downwind from the town landfill. Even when we did laundry, we still stank. We were always teased and mocked through school. Most kids, make sure to save your allowance. Poor kid, rich kid. What's that? LOL. I would get an allowance, save as much as possible, then have my mom need it and spend it all on drugs. Fun times. Seldom or never travel abroad. I've never been out of the country and I'm 24. Not even Canada. Never going to the dentist before. Relatable. First time I ever went to the dentist is when I joined the Navy. You have to get creative for entertainment. Rarely had toys and friends definitely couldn't come over. Sugar rice was very common. So was crap on a shingle. White gravy with meat on white bread was at least once a week. Parents constantly busy with work and side jobs and being exhausted all the dang time. Hand-me-downs were new clothes. Sharing a room with multiple family members. Having to do chores without getting money or a reward. Always getting consoles and games like 2-5 years after they released and everyone was onto new crap. Bruh, there's a lot. That game where you hunt for change down the back of the sofa so your mum can buy cigarettes. Struggle meals. Love my mom. No matter how hard times got, she always found a way to whip something up in the kitchen. My fave was fried tortillas with refried beans. Sometimes with cheese. Coming home to the gas, light or water shut off. That shame when your parents have to tell the cashier to take items off because they didn't have enough water in the shampoo detergent. Collecting all the change in the house to cash in at the local grocery store. Knowing your mom's social security number by heart at 12 BC you had to call to set up payment arrangements for the utilities while she worked evenings. School lunch shaming. For example, indebted Rhode Island kids must eat the sun P&B of shame. My school had free lunch tickets. They were a different color than the regular lunch tickets. That way everyone could know your family was poor. The value of $1. Bread for hot dog buns. Poor or Australian. What it is like to eat spaghetti for over a year and a half straight. Other than my birthday, that is exactly what I've done and am doing. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate IT. I hate IT. I hate IT. Sorry, I had to have a moment. Stressed myself out. I'm no expert at being broke, but you should probably get some rice or something. They call it intermittent fasting by not eating breakfast, but that's pretty standard to me how I grew up. Not eating breakfast, lunch, dinner because there was no food. You have been visited by the cook dog. Comment: without food there is no paradise, so that you never burn the stakes. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.